If you're going to renovate old buildings, you don't know what's behind the walls. And there's a lot of assumptions at the beginning that are just that, they're assumptions. And you don't know until you really dig into the building. That can reveal some significant surprises.
We had electrical issues, plumbing issues, HVAC issues, even structural issues. In that moment in time when you're undoing things becomes very challenging, especially for a client's perspective.
The client on this project was ready for that. Maybe not as ready as she wanted to be, but she was a real good sport in understanding that you have to do what you have to do the right thing for the building, for the project.
It was hard to remember what it looked like because it's such night and day from where we started to where we stopped. So it just speaks to design, function, everything. So it was a really great collaborative effort to get to where we are. At the beginning, I just knew it and it was going to feel right in the end. I didn't exactly know how we were going to get there, but we did.
This is a row house. You have party walls on both sides, you have neighbors above you. So for us, it's really about the logistics and being a good neighbor. We want to make sure that we're keeping everyone as happy as possible.
So the space is all connected, so it's in essence all one large room, so you have multiple functions and multiple zones. And integration was very important down to the materials, the architecture. So we kept everything quiet. It wasn't so much that we were adding square footage, but we were trying to take what we had and bring it up to a modern day condominium for the Back Bay.
An early design idea was just a clean, quiet space throughout with little touches here and there, be that furniture or a hardware pop or a little color pop here and there. A lot of the design impulse was to layer in what may have been back in the day when it was built in a way that worked with cleaned up floor plan and maybe some more clean and modern touches throughout.
One of the client's must-haves was centered around the staircase. The staircase was originally very unwelcoming. You kind of walk down and around a corner.
It didn't look good. It was not code compliant. It's tight, and the shape of the stair reflects that tightness. And a winder that was just a nice, clean, geometric shape was the thing that fit, curling down into what was carved out of space.
We made the early decision to build them off-site. We said that this should be treated like a piece of furniture. So we worked with King Stairs up in New Hampshire, and they fabricated the staircase off a set of shop drawings. The key component to that was to make sure that when the stair showed up, it fit. Worked with the team at Trowel to plaster that wall, and they actually cast that wall out of solid plaster and making sure that it's perfect. So when the staircase did show up and it was in pieces, they actually assembled it and it fit within 1/8 of an inch of that wall, which was just a testament to the commitment of quality and craftsmanship that the entire team really set out for in the beginning of that particular project.
Everybody that executed that stair did so at a high level.
The pendant above the staircase is very quiet, make sure it was well lit, and have the focus be the staircase itself.
The overall vibe was to let's create something that's historic, but there were two areas where we would try and introduce something a little bit more clean and more modern, and that's the kitchen and the stair.
There were some really cool components to that kitchen. The oversized upper cabinetry is really exaggerated and gives that space a really elevated feel. The micro shaker doors are something that respects tradition but dips into the more modern design that we were going for. One of my favorite features is the actual spice rack, and we had this mechanical chase in the corner of the kitchen. We had the idea of adding a piece of powder-coated angle iron sticking out through the stone. So rather than having this bulky stone shelf, we had this really thin steel piece of metal that stuck out of the stone, which was nearly invisible, but when you loaded it up with spices on the rack, it functioned really well.
We didn't want to make it feel like it was a real kitchen into the living room, into the dining room. So the cabinetry is very quiet. It is beautiful. We kept the kitchen all pretty much white, and we did the same thing using a white rhino marble countertop. So it has really nice quiet veins. It made a beautiful impact but didn't take over the space. The goal was to just have everything as integrated as possible so it was harmonious. And it has an enormous amount of function for such a small footprint.
The basement floor or the downstairs was very dark and low ceilinged, and clearly that's where everybody's going to be sleeping. I'd say the one must-have was to open that space and bring as much light as possible. This particular unit shares a heating system with the whole building, and it's an old steam unit. All of that plumbing for that steam unit was in the ceiling of the garden floor. We really had to tackle a lot of the building systems in order to get where we ultimately went.
So we did our best to raise the ceilings as much as we could, working with the parameters in the property to just get as much light as we could, keep everything just bright and light in a garden level. So we just carried that throughout. So it's just making sure we kept and paid homage to what a Boston proper property should look like in the Back Bay. And we wanted to do everything we could not to feel like you were in a garden level. And I think we really achieved that with the finishes, the fixtures, and the fittings in that whole room.
One of my favorite details in the whole home is the way in which we installed a lot of the crown molding. In the living room, we have this beautiful built-up multi-piece crown molding from Kukin Brothers, but we also simplified that in other spaces where we were installing a single piece of crown molding, which typically you would see pushed up against the wall and the ceiling, and John actually designed it to essentially float off both the ceiling and the wall, and giving again that shadow gap that isn't a typical detail that you would see, but it really paid tribute to the tradition.
The molding really was a way of trying to speak to the age of the building and say this is what would have been built back in the day. This is not find a profile and stick it up there and say that the molding is done. This was laying out the paneling very carefully, selecting each section of the molding. So baseboard, you've got your panel insets, you've got your chair rail. The crown itself probably comprised of 4 different pieces. We did several mock-ups to kind of dial it in and get it right.
The paint colors are all the same, just different sheens. It really captures how heavy the crown is and how John wanted that to come across. So my furnishings just sort of layered on top of that. So everybody's working together harmoniously and nothing is coming out louder than the other thing. Storage overall in any Boston property is very hard to come by, and it felt that way when we first looked at the property. So finding any square inch, not square foot, but square inch.
And looking for all of those additional inches within the space, from storage, little cavities that we can tuck in, additional cabinetry. We're really looking at a micro level to maximize that opportunity.
This is a coffee bar that's in the kitchen that you wouldn't think is until you open it, and then we have a really nice, really rich blue paint color that kind of, screams out you a little bit. So not everything is white. Every nook and cranny we could capture, we did.
We were able to utilize the fireplace. We designed a kind of clean fireplace surround that integrated with the millwork around it, I think in a way that's pretty respectful.
The one in the living room was more traditional in the sense that you had stone around it, but then this built-up piece of carpentry. And the team spent hours manufacturing this mantle and had these really subtle details that John designed down to the taper of either side of that mantle, which really was just a nice detail. And in the office, I think, is my favorite fireplace because we had this beautiful millwork on either side and kind of a funky room because of the way it was set up. It wasn't really square, so you had these offset elements. And we ended up detailing the stone in a way that kind of celebrated the fact that the fireplace was offset, and then adding all of these half-inch reveals. The importance of a relationship between builder, architect, and designer is really paramount in any successful project. We all are looking to ultimately build the project, delivering not only the end result to our client, but the end result as we had all expected it to be.
Having a team that is all on board and all on the same page is absolutely imperative. The client was West Coast based, so it was a lot of technology involved in terms of Zoom meetings and taking leaps of faith for what we were doing coast to coast and seeing it every so often. I'm sure she would like to have seen it much more, but she had a lot of faith in the team that she selected, myself, John, and Nick and their teams. So it was very integral that we all worked together.
The collaboration between all parties was really good. Working with Nick and NS was fantastic. They have a lot of areas where they excel. and working with Karin was fantastic as well. All of these projects, it's always going to be a collaboration, and it's a long one. There's many moments that things can go south, and it's easy to have personalities exacerbate that. And I thought on this project, we did a really good job of making it past the finish line. You know, everybody's friends and in good spirits. It's nice to work on projects where that high bar is acknowledged from the beginning and ultimately met. That's rare, and it's nice to see. So glad to be a part of that.
That's it.